several years ago, more years than I would like to admit, I did a Sunday morning series on the book of Ecclesiastes. And I was trying to remember if we were still at the result, whether it was that many days, years back, or whether it was here. But the book of Ecclesiastes has 12 chapters. And I took a chapter every Sunday, and for 12 Sundays, we marched through the book of Ecclesiastes. And ever since doing that study and doing that series, the book has been an attractive book to me. I have gone back to it and read it time after time. But I would warn you about reading this particular book. You need to understand the surroundings. You need to understand who wrote the book and the condition he was in when he did write it. I think most of us know that the book was written by Solomon, and Solomon started out his being king of Israel in a marvelous way. And I think everyone remembers the prayer that he prayed on taking the throne, and he asked God, give me wisdom and a discerning spirit instead of wealth and all of the things, the glory and the fame that he could have asked for. He asked God, please give me a wise, discerning heart. And God gave him that. And because he did ask for that, God granted him power and wealth and riches and all of the things that he did not ask for. But it seems that as time went along, Solomon began to lose his close relationship with God. In fact, we are really not sure how Solomon ended his life with God. Several things captivated him, distracted him, took him away from his devotion and his dedication to God. And what we have in the book of Ecclesiastes is his writing in a time when he was terribly confused. He had gotten so far away from God that he lost his proper perspective, his spiritual perspective, and he writes this book. And for many of us in reading it, we would say that it's a very confusing, complicated book, and it is if you don't remember the circumstances and who it is. I've given a title to this sermon, Remembering Solomon and what happened to him when life becomes meaningless. This concept of meaningless dominates the book, and I've given a meaning to the word meaningless: without significance, without purpose, without hope. And when you read the book, it seems that this is where Solomon had come. His life had lost all meaningful purposes. He seemed to have no significant reason for everyday's life. He seemed to have lost his hope. Let me read for you the introduction as it comes on the screen. The book of Ecclesiastes is dominated by the concept of meaninglessness, written surprisingly by a man who it seems had everything a man would need to have a meaningful purpose for his life. Everything needed for purpose and hope. But here's what we know about this man. Let me first go to a question that I asked myself in reading and studying this book, and I've simply labeled this the big question. Ask in various ways, how is it that a man could come to a place in his life when everything lost meaning to him. And let me just say, as I am asking these questions and have studied this book anew recently, I thought of how relevant this is to our world today. How many people seemingly have lost a meaningful purpose in their life? So I asked the question, how is it that a man could come to a place in his life when everything meaningful to him is lost? How is it that he could find nothing to purchase with his vast wealth that would bring him happiness? Money, what will it buy? What will it not buy? And this man was as wealthy as any man who'd ever lived, but his money brought him no contentment, no happiness. With all his power and authority, why could he not use it to bring something or someone into his life that would satisfy him? In this book, he writes about the meaninglessness that his life had come to. Nothing interested him. He did not desire anything. He was empty and could not fill himself with all that he had at his disposal. He had lost purpose. He had lost all hope. He lost significance. He was on a deadly search. I want you to listen. In the first chapter, I want you to listen. We will read from the first chapter how he opens this book. And I suppose this first chapter is probably as well known as any chapter, except maybe the third chapter. Remember, the third chapter is where he talks about there's a time to live and a time to die, a time for war and a time. We know that. But here in this chapter 1, beginning with verse 3, generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises, the sun sets, hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south, turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning to its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. That's the way he opens this book. Nothing new. What has been will be again. There's certain repetitive words and phrases that he uses throughout the 12th chapter. And this concept of meaningless begins in the first chapter but is carried throughout the entire book. The word meaningless is used 32 different times in these 12 chapters. Meaningless. It dominates the book, dominates his thinking, dominates his mind, dominates him. Meaningless. He uses the phrase under the sun 30 times, indicating his perspective. He was looking for a meaningfulness under the sun, in the world around him, the world that he had, the world he had built. And he uses this phrase 30 different times. He uses a significant phrase 7 times. He uses the phrase, a chasing after the wind, referring, of course, to his purposes, his drive, trying to take hold of something that would bring meaning into his life, significance. He said it's like chasing after the wind. You seem to take hold of it. There seems to be a promise, and yet it's gone. It evaporates. It's a chasing after the wind. 14 different times he uses simply the phrase after making some statements, this too is meaningless. 14 different times he uses that phrase.